Okay, so this week it seems we're going to start upside down underneath the car. So why are we upside down underneath the car? Well, basically we're getting to the point now where we can stop, should I say, being underneath the car. That's the aim, is to get all the little jobs done underneath the car so that we can get it off the ramps and start to concentrate on the bodywork. So obviously I've had a bit of welding to do in some of the floors here, so what I've done now is just gone over the plates with some Tetra sheets. It's just some black tar-like underseal for want of a better word. And just going around the bottom of the floors here, giving it a lag in, all those little patches I've put in on the underside, just to make sure it's all protected and essentially future-proofed. So we've done that side. This side was pretty good, didn't need doing anyway, but we've just gone over a few bits there. And also gone around the underside, well, you can see it very well, the underside of the boot. Well, the trunk, if you're from the States. So same sort of thing, just gone under there with the shuts and just given it all a good lag in black. This is quite good because it's got this line here which becomes our paint to line, so everything from the back up on that line will be white and anything on the inside will be black. Not sure on the arches yet. As you can see, the inside of the arches is white, but I may just do them black. I don't know. Haven't really decided yet. Again, very hard to worry about the paintwork when you're at this stage. So one of the other jobs we need to get done here is an oil seal on the front of the rear differential. So this is apparently a common area where Spitfires go. I just noticed when I come out here sometimes there's a little drip of oil on here, which can only be coming from the oil seal that's underneath there. I've taken the, excuse me for the weird voice, I'm trying to do this upside down. I've taken the fill plug off the side there, and no oil ran out, which, you know, is fine because that's obviously the fill level. But I need to try and get this nut off. The problem being, there was a cover over this which I basically had to completely destroy to get it off. It's a push fit cover and it's a domed head, which means of course you can't get any kind of tool on it. So basically I had to stab a screwdriver through it and then basically just hammer it and mangle it till it came off. Then underneath you've got this nut. Now this is apparently the new, I've done a little bit of reading, and apparently this is a newer type. The older ones had a castle nut with a split pin through it, and this is the newer type, which is a nylock nut. The problem is I don't have a socket big enough to go on this. The biggest sockets I've got in my set is a 27, and I think this is maybe a 29, so I need to borrow one off a friend. And I need to mark the position of this nut because the washer that sits behind this is a crush fit. That's how it holds the oil in for the diff. So you have to mark it with a marker pen so you know where you start, and then count your turns as this nut comes off. So obviously when you refit it, you're refitting it to the exact same, you know, crush fit, if you like, that it was before. So I do need to get a socket to get that off. Once I've done that, and I've done the two sidebars I just said about, there's actually no reason why I can't not be under this car again. This is that nut cover from the rear diff. As you can see, it's just a push fit. Mine had basically rusted itself in place. Because of the lip on it, there's no way of getting anything underneath it to pry it out. And because it has this smooth convex top to it, a dome basically, you can't get anything on it to grip it. So as you can see by mine, it looks like it's had a gunshot. I basically had to hammer a screwdriver into it and just prise it off until eventually it popped off. I soaked it in WD and God knows what else and still couldn't get it off, so basically I had to destroy it to get it out. Now of course I could hammer that back down again to roughly the right shape. There's not really any point, I don't think, because that nut that's on the front of the diff, obviously the prop shaft bolts over at the front of it. So you're never going to get anything in there anyway because, you know, the prop shaft bolts and completely covers it. So I think that will just be left off. I know you should replace these parts where, you know, where you can, but honestly I don't see the point for it. So I'll get rid of that. Here's our new oil seal, which is going to go in there. This is the whole reason we're taking that off in the first place. I'm going to have to make myself a little oil seal picker so I can pull the old one out and then tap the new one in place. something like a rubber mallet, maybe a big socket on the front of it, just drift that back into place and then spin that nut back up again. And that's your fill plug for the side of the diff. So again, the fill plug is obviously halfway up the side of the diff, and that gives you your fill level. You fill it through here, and when it starts running back out again, you know you're at the right level. Annoyingly, there's no sump plug, there's no drain plug on the bottom of the diff. So there's no way of actually getting the oil out of the diff, that I can see anyway, other than going through all the rigmarole I'm going through now to get that seal out. See, when I pull that seal out, all the oil, any oil that's in there is going to run out. But maybe you're meant to suck it out, you know, you can make a suction bottle and pull it out, I don't know. But again, no drain plug on it, which is odd and annoying, because, you know, again, I'm refurbing the car. I want to know if there's A, any oil in it, B, if the oil's any good, you know, so yeah, thoroughly annoying. But there we go, such is life, these old things. So hopefully, once I got myself a big socket, we can get that bad boy back in. Okay, we have finally succeeded in getting this nut off the diff so that I can change the oil seal. So I've read a few things online about the best way to do this. Now, this thing is torqued up very, very tight, to the point where it's very, very difficult to even get enough torque under there with a standard socket. The socket size, by the way, it's meant to be 1 1/4 inch in imperial, or in metric it is 29. The 29 is a little bit loose, but it's pretty good. You can just see some markings on the faces of that there. Sound right Cornish now, don't I? But yeah, the 29 is pretty good. Now, the other thing you'll need, if I just show you underneath the car, bear with me. Where's my metal? Right, so there is the input shaft for the diff, missing its nut. You'll notice I've written 11 on here. That's because it took 11 full turns to get the nut off. So what you do is you draw a vertical line on the nut with a permanent marker, and then start to unwind it. And you do it half a turn, take the socket off, have a look. Do it another bit of a turn, take the socket off, have a look. And obviously when your lines mark up again, then you know it's one turn. Keep going around. It took exactly 11 full turns from where I'd marked it to the point where the nut came off. Obviously you can do the last few turns by hand. So mark, if you say got 10 turns and then a quarter, you'd remember that it went on with the mark facing this way, so that you can put it back on again in exactly the right order. This one has a crush bearing inside it. This is why it's so important to actually get that, that torque specification right. And it is on their tyre. They're saying about 120 Newton meters, 150, something like that. I found underneath the car here, there isn't enough room to get a full-size breaker bar on it before it hits the ground. And also, because obviously you're turning the input shaft for the diff, all that happens is the wheels want to move. And there's nothing quite, you know, like being under a car, torquing that and seeing it starting to roll backwards off the ramps. So obviously, you know, block the front of the wheels up, as I have. All the wheels are chopped. But the other thing you also need is a metal bar, because there's still a bit of slop in this. So I got a metal bar and put it all the way across, drilled a hole in the metal bar to line up with that stud, so that obviously when you start torquing on that nut, this can't move. They say to use a piece of angle iron, you know, whatever you've got to hand. I had this to hand. It's not angle iron, it's 2mm steel, but it did the trick. As you can see, there's a nice big hole I drilled in there. Bolt that up against the underside so it locks against the chassis rails. Ideally you'd want to get 2 holes in it, but again, it's so awkward under here to try and get a bar that will line up with 2 of these holes, which isn't sticking in the way or obscuring the socket. It's quite awkward, but it's done now. There we go. So that is now that nut taken off. So hopefully we can just slide this off, get to the washer behind it, swap it out and put my new one in, and then not have to worry about climbing under this bloody car again. Right, let's give it a go. There you go, and with the flange pulled off, all your old transmission fluid is going to run out, so make sure you've got a bucket under it. Although mine appears to have water in it as well. I can't be sure, sorry about shaking, I'm trying to do this upside down whilst not put my head under it. Yeah, looks like it's got moisture in it as well, so As I said before, there is actually there's no drain plug on the bottom of the diff, so I don't even know how you're meant to drain it properly. There's no drain plug on the front here. On this side, obviously there's a fill hole on the other side, which I've already showed. Other than splitting this diff, I don't know how you're supposed to drain it, other than doing exactly what I've just done and pulling the input flange off. So we're going to leave that a while for it to bleed itself out, and then I expect what I'll probably do to try and clean it out is blast it full of fresh transmission fluid and just see if we can use that to sort of squirt all the old stuff out with it. But yeah, it's going to be a bit awkward to clean it properly, I must admit. But yeah, we'll figure out a way. Normally water rides on the top of oil, I believe I'm right in saying, or is it the way around? Can't remember. I have to do an experiment. If water does ride on the top of the oil, that's good, because it means obviously when it runs out, it'll be the water that runs out first. Now this is, even as I'm watching it, this is starting to thicken up. So I'm hoping that any water that was in it has now come out, and it's just dirty transmission fluid in there, which we can then blast out. Don't know, I'll have a look. Okay, and there's the input flange. When it's just pulled off, obviously when you take that off, it just simply slides off. So this is the outer facing edge. This is what you'll see. And this is the inner facing edge. So you can see all that crap in there. Now that may be because it bounced off when it came out and bounced over the little bit of carpet I've been lying on down there, which isn't overly clean. But yeah, there's grit and all kinds of crap in there. So we're going to give that a blast off quickly with some brake cleaner, just to make sure it's all nice and clean before we put it back on again. There we go, that's better, isn't it? Nice and shiny. I'm not going to clean up any more than that because, you know, there's no point. As long as it's cleanish, free of rust and debris, then I'm happy. Well, after an absolute shit fight, I managed to get that old seal out. I thought getting the seal out was going to be the easy bit. You just put a little hook in behind a seal puller and out it pops. No, I've been ragging on this thing for 2 days. This is the inward face. So this is the face that goes towards the bearing. That is the face I've been working on. As you can see, I've ended up ripping all the metal off here, trying to get a lever out, get a grip on it, cut the metal back so I can crush it in to remove it. Oh, it was an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. You can see it's actually got a double thickness of metal. See the bit I've been pulling out of the top, and then it's got another bit of metal down below. So trying to sort of chisel your way through it without damaging the actual diff case itself, a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. In the end I managed to get out with a pair of long nose grips. Just keep sort of grabbing onto it and trying to lever and pull it out. Spraying it with WD-40 and all kinds of stuff, and eventually it came out. So now I can get my rubber one in its place. I'm going to grease this bad boy up, get this back in, get the diff and everything bolted back together, then I can get the exhaust on and get this bloody thing off the ramps at the rear for hopefully the last time. I am so looking forward to not having to crawl underneath this car again. I have been, I mean, anyone who's worked on cars or done restorations will know exactly what I mean, but I have been in and out underneath that car probably 20-30 times a day for God knows how long. I couldn't tell you. A long time. It feels like I've never done anything else. But it appears now I'm getting towards the end. So let's just hope, fingers crossed, this seal goes in okay. I've got this big old socket, which is a, what size is this? 1 13/16. It's one I used on the actual, on the crank pulley at the front. I use this on a long breaker bar, sorry not a breaker bar, a torque wrench. Big difference, but I know how everyone uses them. To actually turn the engine over when we were first trying to free the engine up and make sure all the pistons were moving properly. So that's just one I borrowed off a friend, and it happens to be a very, very close size to that seal. So hopefully I can, with some nice light taps on this, I can use it to drive that seal home and get this thing bolted back up and have done with it. I never ever want to pull a diff seal on a car ever again. Ta-da! It's all back in again. Hooray! So the new oil seal.
Okay, so now with the diff all sorted out, we can get the exhaust back on. So we've mounted the back box here, as you can see. It's a little bit uneven, I must admit. If I square it off to the back of the car, you can see it looks a little bit high on the right. Now on the left hand side, it's got a rubberized strap. You can't see it, but it sits inside this box section here. It's got a rubberized strap which holds it. On this side there's no strap, it literally bolts up directly to the car, and the problem with that is you can see it's tapping against the body there. So I'll have to make up some kind of strap on that side just to drop that side down a little bit so it's hanging rather than pressing against the car, because you know what'll happen as soon as you start driving, that's going to start tapping and it's going to drive you up the wall. As well as, of course, obviously the hot exhaust, you know, doing your paint work behind it. But I can just get you under there. There we go, that's our stainless steel exhaust, front to back. So it comes up the manifold down there. I haven't put the brackets on it yet because I ordered the wrong size. Bloody metric to imperial conversion. Comes back through the frames there, obviously you need a clamp on there. And then to our back box there. So yeah, all pretty groovy. I did have a bracket on the other side of the gearbox, which is that one there, which is just a bracket that I made up, but it was more harm than good, to be honest. With that bracket on, the exhaust just wouldn't fit, or it would fit, but it was absolutely rock hard tight against the bottom of the chassis. And obviously the exhausts aren't designed to be pressed in tight against the chassis. So now there's a bit of movement in that. Sorry, the camera's probably bouncing as I'm doing it, but there's a bit of movement in that. It's not pressing up against the chassis. I will put a hanger on it somewhere on the bottom of the gearbox, but I'll just obviously make it a slightly different shape to the one I've already got there. But that's on, it ain't going anywhere. So, obviously it's a bonnet, or a hood, if you live on the other side of the pond. This is actually one of the first times I've actually seen this side of it, because it's been propped up against the wall the other way around, pretty much since I've got it. And you can see, it's got a lot of surface rust here. Some of the rust I'm sure will be more disastrous than others. You can see it's had some remedial work in the past, but not to a particularly good standard. It's still got the original Spitfire 1500 logo on the bonnet, and obviously we've got a lot of paint coming off there. Some nice bright steel under there, so maybe it's not the end of the world. I'm sure it'll be covered in filler. You can see on the arch here it's had some filler, or Bondo, put over it, so clearly that arch is rusted through in the past. And again on the side here we can just pick that filler off, because again, whoever has done this before unfortunately hasn't treated the metal properly before they've put the filler on. So of course over time all that rust has just seeped through. Basically they go along this seam. You can see here in the factory this is made in two separate parts, the top part and the bottom part. And obviously once the water gets in between those seams, it just, you know, just rusts itself out. And in the corner here you can see it's pretty bad there as well, so that'll need a patch in it. So the first thing I suppose we've got to do is get this thing cut back to bare metal so we can see what we're working with, and then we can look to remedy any of the any patches. I know inside the arches it's had some, you won't be able to see very well in this light, but it's had some replacement panels on top of the arches there. Haven't been done to a particularly good standard, but you know, they are largely superficial, they're not structural, so it doesn't matter as much. But I'd like to buzz them back and clean them up a little bit if we can. And again, I'm sure there's some on top of that one somewhere. There, yeah, there's one right there. So yeah, we'll get this one cleaned back. I think what we'll do is we'll blast it in situ where it is here, I borrowed a compressor from friends and I got some 40 grit pads, so that should make short work of this. Take it back to bare metal and then we'll flip it over. We'll do as much of the inside with the machine as we can. Obviously there's going to be some areas we just can't get to with the DA, but we'll do as much as we can with that, and then we'll probably do the rest with a whatever they're called, you know, the long, thin, flexible ones they use for blocking out bodies. And then we can see what panels we need to make and go from there. So we've stuck the old car outside for the moment. Just going to let her get a bit of sunshine. Gives us a bit of space. It's another glorious day. And she's quite happy sitting out here in the sun for the moment. So we'll leave her be. Looks exactly the same as when I first got it. Well, I know it's not exactly the same, you know. I know I've done the work. I know the work's been done, but to look at the moment, I guess it's the same way whenever you're doing any restoration work. Until you actually start doing the body work and start to, you know, get it all in the same colour, or at least in primer, it just never looks like you've done any work on it at all. It looks like you've spent months and months doing absolutely nothing. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get on and see if we can start to get this thing cut back. Well, this has been a little swine. Didn't realise how hard it was to get 40-odd-year-old paint off. Even with the DA sander or my electric sander, it's really hard to get this thing down to bare metal. But, you know, we're tackling the worst areas at first anyway, getting rid of all the rusty spots, going back through all the layers of paint. Looks like we've got at least 3 or 4 layers of paint in places. You've got the white top, you've got the grey primer, then you've got a yellow, and we've also got a red oxide on there as well. So we're sort of going through 3 or 4 layers of paint. I feel more like a geology student than a car restorer, but yeah, we'll keep battling away with it. Keep sanding, keep cutting. Didn't think it was going to be a quick job.